We all came up from Mi'kma'ki. So I came in 2016 to go to school here, and my daughters came to Toronto in 2017. And so we made these kinds of bonding things that we would do. Like, even though Waterloo is only like an hour and a half away from Toronto, it still takes some time in coordinating for us to visit each other to maintain those family bonds. And so a couple years after we came, it would be about 1 year after my daughters came to Toronto, they were coming to Waterloo to come visit me this year. Usually I go visit them because it's a lot easier, but they were coming to visit me, and we were all going to stay together in my little basement apartment, which we eventually did. But for my oldest daughter was having a hard time trying to access the bus out of Toronto. She tried the Greyhound, she tried the Go Bus, because it was the holiday break during Christmas time. It was very, very busy. And she was waiting in line, and there was a snowstorm happening at that time. And she was calling me on the phone, and she was like really crying and everything. I can't get a bus, I can't get on. And she had left her apartment to come visit with a little Christmas cactus that she had. So here she is, trying to get a ticket, and she eventually gets back to the Greyhound bus depot in Toronto. And she's standing in line hoping to get a seat. She's got this little Christmas cactus in her hand, and all the people and she's crying, and other people are like, oh, you go ahead, you get a seat. And so the snowstorm is raging, it's getting worse. My other two daughters had already arrived here. So we were at the Hasty Market, just up there, waiting for her to arrive. And of course, since it was a snowstorm, it took forever. It was a very long trip. But she eventually made it here to the Charles Street bus terminal, and she's just bawling. We're all bawling. She's got her little Christmas cactus in her hand, and it's kind of like full of snow and a little bit wilty, but we were all together, and that was the best thing ever. So even though it was a very traumatic day for her in a sense, she did eventually make it. We were all together for the next 2 weeks for the holiday break, and it was a very wonderful time in my little basement. So I was very grateful that she was able to make it here, because this is kind of a spot where I have spent a lot of time too. And just talking about coming back and forth to Toronto, this would be the spot where I would end up. And oftentimes I would just go pick up some food at the Hasty Market and take it home and eat because I'd be very hungry. But I've traveled a lot back and forth through this terminal. So I hadn't actually thought of it before until they actually said that, they were going to shut it down. I'm like, wow, what am I going to do? What are we going to do? What is this all going to mean for our getting together during, and during the pandemic, it's been less and less time because travel has been, we've been in lockdowns where traveling has really not been allowed from certain places. So I often think about that time, that Christmas, when she almost didn't make it, but she did. It's kind of wrapped up in all of the things of how we get around, what that means. We can get around in a region like this. There's transit here, but when we're looking at going out beyond the Waterloo region, what does that mean, coming back and forth and being with family? So wouldn't it be great if we imagine that when my daughter arrived, that instead of us being out in the snow and in a snowstorm, that we could actually have a safe place where we could be while we waited, in a place that she could come to, a community space where she could just take a moment to kind of decompress, maybe get herself together, a lovely community space where we would feel welcomed in on the land.